There's a lesson here, and I'm not the one that's gonna figure it out.
Did anyone have this kind of episode on their Season 7 bingo card? I'm not really sure how to feel about this one, fellas. Because on the one hand, this episode kept me guessing about what was gonna happen, which is good, but at the same time, it never really went anywhere. Let me explain. So, Rick and Morty is a very varied show. Episodes like these tend to start out with a simple catalyst. The family eats spaghetti, simple. And then Morty finds out that the spaghetti comes from people who offed themselves, and then the episode spirals out of control, Pickle Rick style. That's what I expected out of That's Amorte, but that's not what we got. Very weird change of pace for Rick and Morty. Instead, we get a relatively self-contained story about people eating people for their spaghetti. This episode takes its time to dive into the moral implications of assisted suicide, in a way that only Rick and Morty has the balls to try and pull off. So, I will say right off the top that I really like the concept for this episode. You know, people being spaghetti on another planet and having to deal with the moral implications. That feels like a classic Rick and Morty episode. I mean, it feels right in line for what the show usually does. But in actual execution, the second act is very rough, I have to say. I think the pacing is a little too slow for too long, and it made the episode seem smaller in scale than it actually was. This is an entire planet of spaghetti people, and goddamn do they keep this terrestrial. Another example of this kind of catalyst storytelling is Analyze Piss.
Y'all ready for piss?
A seriously underrated episode from last season. The catalyst is Flamingo Dad. He gets the orb, Rick goes to therapy. He has a short but very serious scene where he talks to his daughter. Rick becomes Pissmaster, goes through a really fun and funny montage, and saves the day in a big explosive finale. That's a second act that moves at a fairly quick pace, as well as giving us different characters to follow. That's Amorte, on the other hand. This week's episode treats us to a more straightforward terrestrial adventure. And while a lot of people probably really connected with its central themes, I think it would have been more engaging if the second act had us, I don't know, planet hopping a bit more, or following different characters of the Smith family as they reeled with these implications. Because these are massive implications. You're eating people. I would have loved to have followed a Jerry storyline about him eating people and seeing people's guts everywhere he sees spaghetti or something like that. I mean, I'm not a writer, so don't take that. But my point is they should have done something else too. I will also mention that we get a lot more of Morty's new VA in this episode, and I do have to admit that it doesn't always work. Don't get me wrong, I think he's doing his best within the constraints of matching his voice to the animation, something that is very difficult to do and very atypical for this industry. But his vocal range feels very small in this one.
Rick, I gotta know, like, what's the secret ingredient? God, no, why? No, why is it always this shit with you? Of course it's a person, Rick. Why couldn't it just be spaghetti?
While it is technically a criticism, I don't hold it against him because he was brought in under strange circumstances, and I still think they're crushing it. I think given some more time and written and episodes that are animated around their voices instead, they could really shine. But it was slightly more noticeable in this one. Now, criticisms aside, this was still a really fun episode. There's a montage towards the end that goes on for a while. It takes its sweet time to establish this guy's entire life story, then at the end, Rick just cuts him open, and everybody throws up. Now, that was funny, in a really twisted way. It reminded me of the extended vat of acid sequence where Morty lives his best and most fulfilling life for like 7 minutes, and then Jerry fucks it up last minute. That jerk back to reality is always a good 1-2 comedic punch, and that is the comedy that I think is really strong. Morty's awkward funeral speech was also really funny, and god, that's going in my cringe compilation. So this episode did have fewer jokes, but most of them were pretty, I don't know, unique in their execution. Here are my favorites.
Have we thought about just giving up and joining the fascist half of the country?
No!
Just saying they get to do more.
Hey, big boy, are you depressed? Oh, Mama likes depression. Oopsie, I spilled my milk. Now we're both sad.
Jerry seriously needs to rethink his life. This episode also continues Rick and Morty's amazing streak of making small callbacks that reward longtime viewers.
Has the Parmesan?
Parmesan.
Parmesan.
Gross.
Yeah.
I hate it.
This is what I love about this new season of Rick and Morty. They seem to have found a much better balance of serialization and episodic, because almost every episode so far, or I think every episode actually, maybe not the first one, like almost all of these episodes of this season have little references in them to past episodes. It could be 5 seasons back, it could be 1 season back, it doesn't matter. They're slipping in these little details that reward longtime viewers, and I think that, I know that I really appreciate them. It's kind of a good middle ground between episodic and continuous, because it's still continuity, but not in the traditional sense of over-serialization that Rick seems to hate so much. And I see the animators were really feeling themselves with this one, with a lot of those little mouth things they do in the first few seasons that, when the characters were shocked, they would do the little small details like that are just perfect, and it makes this episode just a little bit better. Also, this moment, I can't explain why, but this is peak Rick behavior. It just is. I should also mention that this episode is one of the most disturbing episodes of Rick and Morty. It's in the thumbnail, and it's not clickbait. Like, this was almost too far. That scene where the torso things come in, and the machine splits them open is seriously like, oh, that's too much. Especially because there's so much of it. The sperm episode will forever be the most infamous episode of Rick and Morty because of just how far it was willing to go. And they doubled down on the incest baby in the Gotron episode. But this one is definitely up there in terms of just, ugh. So on the one hand, this episode left me questioning what is life, what is death? It wasn't the death that was disturbing, but the complexity of life. I really like that final message. Only Rick and Morty can think of a concept like spaghetti people and actually get like something, not a life lesson, but just something interesting out of it. It's the complexity of life that really touches you, and not death itself. On the other hand, Rick Prime next week, bitches.